Okay, you can click accept. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dreams Come True, the podcast, where we help to bring your dreams a little bit closer to real life through each and every episode. And today we're so glad to have my beautiful friend Chris. It's been a long time since we met, but I'm still following you and your family on each and every step of the journey. And welcome to Dreams Come True.
Hi, good morning, Dad. Thank you for thinking about me for this podcast.
Yeah. So, yeah, could you help me with a bit of introduction to everyone who listening, please?
Oh, sure. I'm a mom of twins with special needs. And I guess that's been my identity for they're 16 years old right now for the longest time. And that's where I've attached my identity, because truly a lot of my life has needed to switch from my career. I needed to shift towards taking care of my twins. I came from a science background. I was an environmental officer in my previous job, and this has taken me like off the road and onto a very different path. I thought I'd study again to become a therapist for my child, but thankfully I found a program, a play therapy for my twins, and now I'm actually studying nutrition, because I now understand that it plays such a big role on the health, not just the health, but the cognitive development of my special needs children.
Well, yeah, I have two things I just want to add on what you just said. Another thing, guys, for Chris' identity is just not, she's a true superhero. You're a superhero in real life. She's a super mom. She's an athlete. Both her and her husband, they are both athletes. And you guys just wait to hear Chris' story, because it's a true miracle in real life, right?
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. So, to start the podcast, we're gonna ask these very simple questions. So, what if you have one thing that you want to give advice to all the parents who are listening to this podcast right now, or to yourself 16 years ago? What is the one thing that you would give away that you think that it might help their dreams come one step closer?
Okay, so I guess it's well, for me it's like, well, especially in the moment when I found out that I had twins with special needs, right? And we understood from birth that because they were premature, that there was a lot of things that was going to happen or not going to happen. And of course there's a lot of dim prognosis. The doctors will tell you what the likely things that they might not achieve. And for a parent to hear that, that's very it takes us down the road towards rock bottom. And that was just the start of my journey. But I've always dared to think that maybe they're wrong, right? Maybe there's something else. And if I was to advise parents, I'd say don't be ashamed to dream big, because science is unfolding. What the doctors will tell you is what they know so far. I mean, even this era of special needs, it's a little bit, it's relatively new. When I was pregnant with my twins, I had a friend who had a child with special needs, and at that point she was saying 1 out of 150 children would have autism, right? But a decade ago, it was like 1 out of 10,000. Several decades back, our grandparents didn't even know what autism is. And now, you go to a crowded place, left and right, you will see at least one person with special needs, right? So I think the data now is 1 is to 48, if I'm not mistaken. It's very, like it's
common.
been
Yeah,
a
much more
decade,
common.
right?
Yeah.
So that means it's almost as if you have like a classroom of 40 or 50, you have at least one child that will need help. They might not be outright special needs, but they will have a handicap, a learning handicap. So as I was saying, science is unfolding, and the doctors will tell you, or the experts, not just the doctors, will tell you what they know so far. But we continue to study, and sometimes even the parents are the best sources of information and help, because they're on the ground. They will tell you what they tried, what works, what didn't work. So yeah, so don't be afraid to dream big. I guess that's what I'd say. And also, when you dream big, it's I'm not saying, just dream big and just imagine it and it will happen. Part of that is also like, when you dream, you start taking steps towards that. You don't know where you're going, but you just know that there's something out there, right? So I remember when I was, my son was severely autistic. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't responding to his name. He would, if you probably left him, he would probably sit in a corner, putting everything in his mouth. Father would come home and all my two other kids would run to him, but then he would just, it's as if nobody existed. And when I enrolled him to preschool, they said, it's just like, we're just babysitting. It's like, he's not doing anything. And I was a bit surprised by that, because I knew, maybe he might enjoy the music. Maybe he might sit to watch a movie, like the videos. But yeah, so anyway, while all of that was happening, and while the world was telling me this is it, there's nothing else, we tried our best. We went through all the therapies, and we went to anything and everything that we can grab onto. We went to aqua therapy, we went to occupational therapy, speech therapy. This is just for both my twins. We went to physical therapy, anything that had a word therapy on it. We had music therapy, and we did everything we can, and he wasn't progressing, right? Yeah. And I thought, okay, there has to be something else. And I had to, I did not want to accept that was it. That was like, we had regular checks, and by his 5th year with a developmental doctor, she said he was still at, he was 5 years old. He was still at like a 1-year-old level. Yeah. Right. Between 8 months and 1-year-old, depending. And so I was like, okay, so doing the math, by the time he's 20, he's going to be acting like a 4-year-old, Yeah. So that was a difficult situation. But despite that, I said, okay, maybe there's something else I'm not doing. Maybe I have to get another degree, switch my whole career. Maybe I'll study to become like a therapist, so that he's not only getting a couple of hours during the day, but he comes home and he gets more therapy from me. I started doing ABA. Actually, I started getting the books, getting raises, trying to cheat and get him to look at my eyes. That was very tiring. But I kept going. And there'd be all these programs, you'd find things, and then, people would bash it, and some people will say it works well. And I remember when I found the Sunrise program, and I was looking at the reviews, and they were growing so fast, and there was so many people saying all the good things about them. But also at the same time, there was like people or even experts saying, wait, like, this is an unscientific program. And yeah. So I had to weigh, right? It's like, there's these bad reviews and there's good reviews, and I had to decide, okay, where do I go? Do we trust, and I realized, like I said, the science of special needs is unknown. Like, who do we trust? These people who think they know what they know, and they think they can judge this other thing because it's not the standard, or the actual parents that actually went there, they're doing it with their kids, they're seeing things with their kids, and I said, okay, from now on, since nobody really knows anything, I am going to go with parents who actually tried things and saw that it helped. And I thought that was a very good formula. So I did it. I played with my kids. I went through training, and it's amazing how much I learned and how empowered I was. I mean, I remember I used to just bring my kids to therapy, and I would be sitting back and thinking they're doing their best. But now I see, okay, you know what? This can be done better because I know my child. Or I remember if something happens in school and your child is just branded as, like not paying attention, or she did something terrible, I have a different set of eyes. And now that I'm trained to understand how it might feel like to be a special needs child and all the sensory issues, I can now go in and tell the teachers, you know what, she just needs sensory processing and is just unable to do certain things. And now it's the teachers who will adjust to help my child, and we can step back from teachers saying, oh, you know what, this is a naughty child, she did this and that. And I now have more input and say, wait a minute, my child has this sensory processing problem. Let's address that first, because that might be the reason why this is happening in school. So it feels great going through all of that. So what I learned is listen to people that have actually done it, people on the ground, because they can give you the best advice. And there's a lot of like feedback or reviews of people that, the experts called, and they will look at something and say, that's not going to work because this is what we've been doing all these years. And really, that's what they've been doing all these years. And what do they still have? And we still have like special needs that are very handicapped, right? Let's try something new. And by doing that over and over again, I've had like tremendous help in this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what we all been through, right? Yeah, listening to all those bad reviews and those scientific data not backing up. But yeah, so it's like, by the way, is your son is Nathan, right?
My son's Nathan, yes.
Nathan.
And his twin sister is Amor.
So he's not only have difficulties with autism, but he's also have challenges with his walking abilities, right?
Yes.
And recently, I think he's walking on his own now. And
right.
I remember that you once said that the doctors were saying that he will never be able to walk on his own, right? Can you share a little bit about that? So there's a big dreams to believe, and I want to paint out a picture. It's not about autism, and it's more just broader. It's about believing in your child to be able to move mountains, to be able to do the thing that we could never imagine. Just believe in them and supporting them. So that is one thing that's very impressive.
Yeah. So when he was born, he had like a hole in his brain, and the doctor said that part of his brain affects his legs. So there's high chances that he might not be able to walk. So we monitored his milestones. He didn't really crawl. He was always flat on his tummy. He couldn't move his hind up. He couldn't crawl properly. If he did, it was very, very, very late, but he hardly crawled. And we had a lot of physical therapy early on, and he was a lot smaller, so I could carry him, and I was, whatever the therapist would teach us, I would do it. But honestly, it was very tiring because like a lot of times it wasn't him doing the work, and the autism part was just like, it was like double jeopardy. So I would kind of like position him, and as his body was having a hard time doing the pose, his mind would just fly off. So there wasn't any learning, there wasn't any brain nerve connection. It was like double jeopardy.
For sure.
And then my back started hurting, and in the end I just had to decide, well, he did walk. I mean, with by the way, I mean, in those first 3 years, I was doing my best, no matter how back aching it was, right? Helping him walk. And by 3 years old, praise God, he walked. He had his ankle foot orthosis is what they call it. It's like a brace. And he walked, and had his little walker, but he walked independently. So that was fantastic. But of course, we still needed, like, when he was a baby, a stroller. Then when he was older, a wheelchair to go to places that are like very far. I mean, it was just impossible not to go anywhere without a wheelchair. And I think milestone happened when again in an autism therapy, and they said, everything that a child does has a purpose. You don't have to stop them all the time. I thought, okay. And I realized he actually liked to climb the table. So it's this tiny thing. And he would climb this table, and he would feel so tall, and he would stand up, because what he would do is one leg would always be dominant and the other leg would like flop, and then and so his posture was like always flopping like this. And the part of the therapy would just to get me to help get his legs stand up, like, so his both knees were working, and the weight was distributed equally. So I had to like hold him as, for as long as I could, or like let him lean on the wall and just remind him constantly. But left alone, he'd just like flop on one leg.
Yeah.
So as a child, you know how babies like to climb. And he was about probably older. He was probably 5 when I went to that autism program, right? 6, maybe 6. So he's climbing the table, and I thought, okay. So the therapy said, everything he does is done for a purpose. Let him climb the table. And I used to stop him all the time because I used to be so worried like he'd fall off. But I said, okay, let me just assess if it's dangerous or not. So I was just guarding my boy. And he climbed on the table, and then he stood now, and he felt really tall, like he could see over the shelves, and I could see in his face he enjoyed doing that. Like for once he felt tall and he was standing. But to do that, he had to stand because he's gonna fall, right? He had to mentally decide, I want to stand. So he was standing, and his toes were like wrinkled because they were like trying their best to grip
to grip on the table surface.
And he was trying his best, but he did, and he would do that for quite some time. And when I figured, okay, he can actually do this, and he was doing it for like an hour a day, and initially I was like, okay, let me just guard you in case you fall. And I figured, okay, maybe he's strong enough. Yeah, we went back to this was in Japan. We didn't have physical therapy by then. The therapy was to like once a month. He was just so busy, and I would have to do the other therapy. But we went back, and he's like, oh, what's he been doing? Because he's like a lot stronger. I was like, oh, he noticed. Yeah, so it's like, sometimes we just have to allow our child to teach us what is best for them. So that really helped. My teenage years, though, however, the muscles, it's just so difficult. The muscles will start pulling, your bones will start like moving towards where the muscles pull. So it just gets harder and harder. And even that stunt that he used to do to stand up on the table, he like loses that ability. I mean, just like us, I remember as a child, I used to jump off a cliff and fall off into the ocean. I don't think I can bungee jump. I mean, I remember I wanted to bungee jump when I was a kid, but as a parent, I can't do that anymore. But so he lost.
You say what? You did triathlon. What did you
No,
say?
I don't want to do a bungee jump. I mean, I think when I was younger, if I had the opportunity, I would, because I jump off cliffs like into the ocean, that kind of stunts. Yeah. But
we are much
now as a parent,
we are
I
much
don't know. I feel
smarter.
like
We appreciate life way better now. It's not a physical thing.
so.
Yeah, just let's put it straight. It's not a physical thing. We're so much smarter now.
I don't know. Yeah. So anyway, so that's so he matured. Now he's a teenager, and I realized by teenage years there was like so many things going on, and he was losing. He was, and he was bigger, he was heavier, so it wasn't that easy for me to help him physically and do the exercise. And in fact, I actually gave up. It was like, okay, let's deal with the autism part, and I'm just gonna give up with the physical part, because like I'm getting older too. At one point my back was had this trauma because I had a backache, and I thought that was it, but thankfully it was just a muscle pain, and it was because I was doing a lot of playing and lifting my boy. But so anyway, so I gave that up, and but that was also the age when teenage years, right? And and again I got into like a slump of like, okay, have we done everything? It's like, is there anything else? But that desire to keep on searching was there. Coincidentally, my daughter developed seizures, puberty related seizures.
Oh, okay.
So she had seizures when she was younger. I think I think I know the cause, and eventually she was weaned off, right? So when her seizures happened again at puberty, of course, doctors will say she needed to medicate. And I said, wait, I need to know the cause. If I know the cause, I can find the solutions, because I don't want to go through the medication route again, because her liver couldn't handle it. I just, so again, I was in this road to like, I need more information. Like, I'm not gonna accept, because there's a lot of complications. She's at puberty. If she's on medication, she's gonna be on medication for life. if we don't have excess, I mean, when she was on medication, when she was younger, it would drive me nuts because sometimes I'd send her to school forgetting to medicate her, and I'm like, oh no, a seizure might happen. Then I'd have to run to school and like just to give her,
Oh, wow.
meds. And even that was like just. So I said, okay, there has to be something happening. This is puberty. Why do children with special needs have seizures at puberty?
Okay.
So I started digging deep, and medically, well, I mean, the doctor that I went to said, no, there's anecdotal stories, but there's no relation. Eventually, I found this thing called catamenial epilepsy, where people with menstrual cycles, or the seizures happen in the menstrual cycle. So it's hormone related. I bring it back to my doctor, and now he was the one that is helping me plot her seizures against her ovulation, against her menstrual cycle. So he worked with me on this. Thankfully, my daughter's a neurologist, and it took time, but she's now seizure free with no medication. So we worked on food, we worked on herbs, we worked on her diet, we had supplements, but basically everything natural. I did not want to do the hormone replacement because that's like for menopause women. And she was seizure free, and she's been seizure free for a year and a half by now. And
so
even
did she frequently? How frequently does she get seizure?
She had it. So at one point she was having it randomly. After a year, maybe she was getting it like monthly and it was, so that's when we figured, okay, it looks like it's menstruation related. So we worked on that. And so by then I was doing so much research. I was studying nutrition. I was studying what helps this and that. And I told my husband, you know what, I'm like doing all this studying. Why can't I should just get like a formal degree and like, have a diploma at the end of this. And thankfully he agreed. So I enrolled myself in a nutrition course, and I'm currently studying nutrition right now. And it's amazing because I should have known these things like a decade ago. I remember when he was a baby, there was a hole in his brain, and I said, okay, what do I do? Is there any food that and the doctor's like, no, there's nothing you can do. There's a hole in his brain. That's it.
Yeah. They're holding you back.
Right. And so I didn't do anything. And then now I'm looking at the research, and omega-3, the fat, the stuff your brain is made of, now has promising results for people for whatever brain situations, right? And like I could have given that to them like a decade ago, and I was stopped. So anyway, can't do anything about it. I'm just thankful I found it sooner or later. Could have been later, but at least I found it now. So we went through that route, and and my son, going back to my son, who at puberty everything was just going crazy again. Everything was becoming more difficult. It was very difficult because I was trying my best to get him to walk from the house towards like a fast food, which he like, how kids like French fries. And it's about 3 bus stops away. And it was so difficult. And I remember there would be like different reasons to quit. Like sometimes it would be so hot, he would bang his head and he'd be crying so loud, and we're just like 1 bus stop away, and I'll take a taxi back home because that was it, end of the trip. And then I tried, and I was just like trying like not to blow up because it was just really tiring. And
I know.
It's just hard to move it. And for a long time I just stopped. It's like, oh, forget it. It's just. So anyway, we do the nutrition path, and we're addressing the diet, and you know what? Things started progressing fast. So, and then we started moving along, and then it became like so easy, and it felt like, I mean, not so easy. It's still challenging, but so easy relative to where I was.
Yes.
I think I better look for a target that's like a restaurant that's further off, because he can now. Like it used to be like a 30-minute, including like all of the stops. We have to stop, hydrate. He just wants to sit. He doesn't want to move. And then it became like maybe a 15-minute walk, and it would be almost. I mean, he'd rest at the bus stations and sit for a while, but as soon as he was ready to go, he'd be up and ready to go. And cognitively also, it was like, if you explain that, okay, we're gonna go to your favorite fast food. Then he'll get it. But the last time he'd be like, I'm just too hot. He'd cry. He wants to use words. It's like, I don't care. Just bring me home. But then now.
But he's verbally now, right? He's verbally.
Yes,
now,
he is. Yes. He can tell me what he wants. Yes. So he can tell me what he wants. He can tell me what he doesn't. Yeah, so cognitively and physically, it became so much easier.
Wow.
And then there was a point even when, and then so now we could, like, we used to bring a wheelchair, you know, like to go to church, to go to the clinic, to go to the dentist, just because it was easier. And just because, like, when you're walking and he doesn't know where you were going to, it's hard to explain, and he'll just sit and he's really heavy. So the wheelchair just made our life easier. But when he was doing all this walking and he was cognitively like more understanding, that it explained, hey, we're going to go to church today, or we're going to go to the dentist today, or like when we get off the taxi and I say, you have to walk a little, okay, and just so he gets it now. He doesn't like complain like before. By the time, because his wheelchair is like for a small baby, he's had that since he was maybe 5-6 years old. So he's now a lot bigger for his wheelchair. So we sold his wheelchair, but we didn't buy a new one because, like, for the short trips that we go, he can actually handle it.
Oh, wow.
So we haven't replaced his wheelchair. We probably need it for probably a trip to like a long distance trip, but like all the trips like within, you know, that we regularly have to go to, he can actually handle now.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
since the last time we met, I think it was in Da Nang. You didn't. So it's the nutrition thing is happening after that, right?
Yes. So I wasn't. Yes.
Recently.
It's very recent.
Very recently.
It's very recent. Yes.
Yeah.
Too late actually.
No,
I wish I
it's
had
not
it
too late.
earlier, but
Yeah, the sooner the
no,
better. It's not too late.
actually,
Yeah.
true. But actually, that's one reason why I know it's very powerful. It's because it happened. You know, like at puberty, it felt like everything was either stable or going down, and there's no sense of like, what else can I do? You know how they say early intervention, like you rush everything when they're young, and because everything slows down. So at puberty, I was feeling stuck.
Yeah.
And that's when nutrition started. I started digging more information about nutrition, and I saw, you know, from feeling stuck, I saw improvements. So so I can see the big difference of what this can do, because if had I had it say when they were younger, I wouldn't know if they were developing because they were simply developing, or they were developing because of the nutrition options that I was doing. So the one advantage that I have of like having it late, even if I wish I had it earlier, was I could see a big difference of a before and after.
Yeah, for sure. And so you were doing it so and everybody else doesn't have to go through that again.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But there was no on any kind of diet before, because I think
we were on
that
a basic diet because, like, for example,
like GFCF or
yes,
nothing.
yes,
With GFCF only.
It was a GFCF diet, yes. And at one point I removed more sugars and starches. And I realized, that a lot of times when my son was hyper was because of the sugar fluctuations. So that was significant.
That GAPS you're talking about? Are you on GAPS?
More on specific carbohydrate diet. Well, actually, more on what I could do. Because if you follow those protocols,
so
like, if you look at the protocols, they're a little bit stressful, right? As a parent, we have a lot in our hands. So basically, what I did was understand the principles, and I say, okay, I'll do this. This is a bit difficult, so I'm gonna let that go. And so I just kind of worked with what I did, and so basically, what it was I will remove gluten and casein and sugars and simple simple carbohydrates, and that was enough to change his like, you know, volcanic eruptions.
Oh.
So he became, you know, when he was a baby, he used to bite me a lot.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah.
Oh.
So that doesn't happen anymore. And I think a big role, sugar plays a big role in that.
So how about the herbs and what is that, supplements? So what are they on now?
Oh, it's a lot. I'd have to say it's very interesting. It's very complicated. I've got twins with additional needs, and both their diets and their supplement needs, I mean, they have the basics like that are the same, right? But their supplement needs are different because they have different needs.
Oh,
So it's
right.
really, there's this whole
So do you
there's
need
this whole domination.
do we need to have a consultation with a doctor to do that, or how you figure it out
A
by
doc,
yourself?
yeah.
Or,
Oh, so I could probably go to, say, a nutritionist, a naturopath, to get more advice for my twins. And what I have done is I have been doing research. And then as I study, I realize, oh, yes, I was doing it right. I look for other parents, and I try to get advice from other people. And this is especially for my daughter and her seizures, right? And so, and I feel like, okay, this my daughter needs, and I'll try it, right? And then sometimes I'll find more things about, say, neurological and peripheral nerves, and I'll say, okay, this my son needs. So I try, and of course, eventually, if I do move on to practicing nutrition, I will have a lot more to share, because I've tried it on
yeah,
hormone issues, on nerve issues, and it's every person will have different needs.
yeah.
And
So I will
which
wait
is
for
amazing.
since you start practicing it, I'll contact you. Okay.
Okay.
So at that moment, I will call you Dr. Chris. But yeah, just
It's
really we don't have. I don't think that we have such nutritionist advice in here in Vietnam. So maybe somebody in Singapore. So just in case people
uh
need, I can do some referral.
okay. Okay, yeah, I'll
Right?
let you know. Or there might be online practitioners
Yeah,
if you're interested in that. Yeah, I wouldn't
it's more
know those.
convenience. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's it's a relatively, I'd have to say, relatively new field.
yeah.
Um, because who would have thought that your food plays a big role in your health?
Oh,
But then again, your food,
I was always know about that.
I know
But
it
yeah,
it annoys me when people dismiss that, because the fact that you're alive is because of
yeah.
the food that you're eating.
You are what
Yeah,
you
but
eat, right? You are what you
you
eat.
are what you eat. But a lot of
Yeah.
people actually dismiss that. I mean, even like, as my children were diagnosed, I was asking, or even they're even dismissed, like, outright, even if the experts know it. So for example, when my daughter had her first round of seizures, he said an option was ketogenic diet, and there was a hospital that's actually able to do that. And
Yeah.
had my daughter been on a ketogenic diet at 4 years old, we would have skipped all of this. She would have probably been stronger. But
Oh.
he said the meds are working, so forget the ketogenic diet. And so I took the doctor's advice. Um, and simply because the ketogenic diet was difficult, he said, but like, believe me, I'll do difficult for my kids, and
Yeah.
parents go through that. Why are you limiting the parents' ability to go through that? But anyway, that's a lesson learned.
Yeah, this podcast, it was, yeah, intentionally it was not about diet, but I
Oh,
was
sorry.
yeah, but it's very beneficial. It's very beneficial. Yeah, believe me. Because what really impressed me is how did you and your husband, how you guys did, very balancing, you have time for your own, you still very loving, and you know that's something that really need to share. How did you get your balance, and you guys was on a journey together, hands on, doing every day, and really understanding and have compassion for each other. That is really one thing that I really want to talk about. And so just briefly, how did you do that? How did you get your husband to involve? And how did you keep your, after what you have shared with us is in a lot of problems, that there was a lot of problems, but how did you keep everything together and have time for yourself?
Yeah, I think a big turning point was when the twins were 5 years old, and nothing seems to be working, especially for my son with severe autism. And I'd look at him and I think, okay, this queer looking child, saliva dripping through his mouth. He was already 5, and like, if nobody will love this child, then I'll have to love you like 110%. I was crying, and every time my husband comes home from work, I would cry all over him again. I would cry, many times during the day I was caring for the kids. My husband would come, I would cry all over again. And I would cry every time I saw their handicap, and I was seeing their handicap a lot. And I would project them into the future and say, this is not going to happen. It was just, but at the same time, I would be doing the research and finding people that actually successfully got their way out of their problems. And thankfully, Bears and Samaria Kaufman recovered their child, and thankfully I found that story. I went to them first I did like all the research, and they had like a lot of free things that you can do at home, and which I tried, and amazingly, like, my son started like looking at me. So I went to the training, and I came back, and my husband was like, what happened to you? Because I was like a happy, cheerful, excited person, looking forward to like all the things that I could do for my kids. Because all of a sudden, somebody told me there's a lot you can do, and the things that you will do is not just something to maintain their autism or to manage their autism, but you'll actually see results, and people have seen results. Like, people have seen the child connect more. So I came back a changed woman. And my husband was like, what did you do to my wife? Here's a lady that used to cry every time I got home from work, and now she was like this bubbly, I can change the world attitude. Literally, I could change the world. So I was working with my boy for, the first month he started to speak. He started saying, I want fried chicken, I want cookies, I want stuff like that, and
So he started to speak after
after
you
I
applied.
attended the
Oh my God.
Yes. And it was just a month, and it was just basic things on
How old was
words,
he
right?
at the moment?
He had words, but he was 5. He had words, he had like scripts. Like, he would say, visit Sesame Street on the web, but he wouldn't say, I want anything. He had
It's not communicating,
like,
he's just saying. Yeah.
It wasn't intentional speech, right? So, but then this time it was like persistent, like, I want fried chicken, or like, I want blueberries, and he would point where it was, and it was like, oh,
That's amazing.
so that was amazing. And he progressed really well in the first few months. And I told my husband, I want to go to the advanced course. And he's like, wait, what? What? You just went to the program like 5 months ago. And then I realized, okay, he doesn't get it yet. He doesn't get what I had. He doesn't get what I went through. I went through.
Oh, he was not like supporting all the way, right? He's just.
Yeah, well, he was supportive, but he wasn't that supportive. It was just like, I see the good stuff in this, but I don't see how great it is. Because I remember sitting in that training, and I thought, wait, this is like a parallel universe. The Marvel universe, like, the world that I came from said, there's nothing you can do about autism. You just have to manage it, right? It's like, and all of a sudden you're telling me, like, whoa, like, I just stepped into this. And then people are seeing things, and I'd be talking to the other parents at lunch, and they already started their programs, and they're already seeing their kids, like, they're looking at them more, and they're touching them more, and they're, and I thought, oh my goodness, like, a completely different world. And it was just a 5-day program. So that was the thing that my husband didn't experience, right? And so he was hesitant about me attending another advanced program. So I said, you know what? You attend the program. So we booked his ticket, and he went there, and he came back. He was a changed man. So it's very good for both of us. It's like, I would outright cry in front of my husband, and I knew that he was just being strong for me. So I never saw his tears, but I know inside he was hurting a lot inside. He just could not show it to me. But we both came out of that parallel universe. And we both saw, like, whoa,
enter the wormhole, and then
I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be so bad. People have actually walked their way out of this. There's like so much more that we can do. We don't have to be stuck futurizing about what our kids can't do. And even in the present, we can be happy about the silly things that they do. Like for example, my son was doing all these things of like he was doing a lot of echolalia, right?
yeah.
And he'd say it, and I'd feel like, oh my goodness, this like I'd just get me so depressed. And the program told us to enjoy it and to even join him. So he'd say echolalia, I'd echolalia back, and he'd start laughing at me. And I was like, oh, it's actually fun doing this autism language. So I started speaking the autism language with my son, and he started like connecting with me so much more. And just getting to that point of understanding how they communicate and how you can communicate with them. That was so life-changing.
Yeah, that was life-changing, definitely.
Yeah.
So one last thing. Can you talk about Embrace Autism? What you guys were been
Yes.
doing? Yeah.
Okay. And I guess that's one more thing about dreaming big. So
Yeah.
when I found this program, I was so excited. I wanted to share it with the world. And
Yeah.
I happened to be
And
in Japan then, and I couldn't share much because language was a barrier. But so thankfully we moved to Singapore. And when I came to Singapore, at any opportunity that I would share, I would share. I went to a public speaking class and I found a venue and I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna share. And people
share
came.
about autism? Autism?
Yes, about
Public
autism,
speaking
about
class?
this program. Yeah. No, and no, actually I went to a public speaking just because I wasn't doing anything. My life has been like a mom, and I said, okay, why not do public speaking? And it opened doors, and I've always just really wanted to just tell people, you know what, there's this amazing program, it will change your life. So I was just doing that. And then friends came that were familiar with the program. And it's like the universe came and said, and I was like, you know what, I should bring this here. I should bring this program here, and I should like bring the training here and bring the trainers here and all of that. And that was impossible. And yet I was
That
just
was
saying it.
impossible.
Just dream it, speak it, and just take little steps. You don't know where it will go. And I was just sharing and sharing. And people came, and Samantha came. She was one of the original founders. And Marie came, and you know what? We brought the training to Singapore. And
And
then
then
we
to
created Embrace
and then to
Autism.
Vietnam.
Yes, and then to Vietnam. And then Suzanne and Paul came in, and people came in, and it was like, alone I wouldn't be able to do this. But like if you look at the first steps that were done, it was just, I'm so excited about this. I'm gonna share. I don't know where this is gonna go. It feels impossible. I want to bring this to Singapore, but it happened. I don't to this day, it's like it's God's grace, or like the universe is just brings it towards you. So dream it, speak it, walk towards it, even if you don't know where it's going.
And
And
just a quick describe this description for everyone else who doesn't know about Embrace Autism. So if you guys have been listening to this podcast and you think that Chris is a force of nature, imagine that there was like 10 more of Chris working there in Embrace Autism Singapore, and yeah, they can turn the world upside down. So just imagine that what they have done is incredible. It's unbelievable. Yeah, and you guys are doing it not just for Singapore but also for Asia and Vietnam and Malaysia and Philippines and Indonesia and Japan. What you guys have done is, deserve a round of applause right there.
It's these things just have to be done. I mean, I was sitting in those therapy centers. I was sitting next to mothers, and I remember having a conversation with another mother who had an older child, and the child was bubbly and all of that. And she said, and she wasn't being bad or anything. She just said, I wish my child will die ahead of me. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just, I don't know who's going to take care of my child if I pass before him. Right? She wasn't being a bad parent or anything. She wasn't just, it was just, like as a parent of children with special needs, you can just think of the worst things to happen or plan. It's just, and I was there, and I know how she felt. I know exactly how she felt. And to be able to go and like you said, like now that you're saying it, I realize me and my husband are a lot more optimistic compared to our to us a decade ago, right? that change, like every parent deserves to be able to put themselves in that new mindset where it's okay, things are going to be okay. And I guess that's the reason why I had to share. And praise God, like other parents came in and helped me, pull it together and make Embrace Autism. And people like you, in Vietnam, it's amazing. And parents in the Philippines and parents in Malaysia, we're all like, that change has just been so life-changing that people need to know.
Yeah. So by the time this video will be aired, I will have a 24-hour challenge tomorrow. So it's just gonna be for autism awareness next month. So I'll be doing a real life 24 hours challenge to raise capital for autism startup, an autistic startup. It's a small groups of young teenagers. They are autistic, and they would love to start a small coffee shop.
Wow.
And I'll be doing fundraising tomorrow, a 24 hours challenge. So hopefully it's it's what you just say, dream big and share it and work through it. So
yes, you're gonna do
hopefully,
amazing.
yeah. So like our last questions. Okay, so what is the one dreams that you hope that will come true for you or for parents in the future?
Oh, for me or parents in the future?
Yeah, you can choose.
I think it's or for both, right? I think it's to have the ability to create a new environment for our children. How do I explain this? We don't have to follow the classic route. There's a classic route of child grows up, becomes an expert in something, gets a job or whatever. And but we don't have to follow that route. Our child, why don't we follow, our child is good at this. Let's work on this and let's see where it goes.
So that's true.
I'm not there yet, but I realized sorry, I I realized that I can't follow the traditional route. I can't. And if I force myself through the traditional route, then I'm gonna go crazy. But my child my kids have skills that are very different, and I'm gonna build their world around it, or I'm gonna help them establish the world around it. I'm not gonna force her into a box that she doesn't fit in, or him and her in a box that they don't fit in. And by doing that, I think that gives me a lot of peace of mind. In fact, I'm very excited. We've got a lot of things planned for our retirement. It might be too premature to share, but we at one point it was scary to think about. But now that we're envisioning it, and now that we're walking towards it, because they're 16, right? They'll be adults soon. It's quite exciting to think about it. So so blaze a path. It doesn't have to be a path that was created by previous people, the classic path, but make them blaze a path. And yes, and it's exciting to think about it.
Yeah, me too. To create a better world for them. And
it's amazing it's amazing what you're doing. I mean, if these kids enjoy serving, to become a barista, and it's amazing that you're there to support them, right? And this is, that's exactly what I'm saying. Create, like, I guess, and it's exciting that we're part of it, that we can help them create that path where they will enjoy it. They will, I remember my daughter, she's telling me, I want to be the greeter for that store. It's like when I pick up information like that, it's like, okay, I pin that and I say, okay, let's create something that works around that. Right. So yeah, I'll tell you when it happens, a decade from now or so.
And I will
And
tell you when
I'll
it
invite
happens.
you.
Yeah.
And I'll invite you. So yeah, so I think I've always been like creating new things.
Yeah.
So I like the idea.
And we know that we will be able to do that. Yeah, this easy part. That the easy part. Dealing with autism make it way stronger than we realizing that we are way stronger when we think we are. Right. So yeah, we can definitely do that. So
Yeah.
thank you a lot, Chris, for spending time with us today. And I wish you all well, and I wish that all of your dreams will be coming true soon in the future. And hopefully one day I will contact you and call you Dr. Chris, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Best of luck for you tomorrow and
Yeah.
your endeavors. That's fantastic.
Okay, so I'll stop recording.